I'm Matt Landau from VRMA, and this is Unlocked, Season 9, Homerunners. This episode features Miriam Ramsey of Jackson Mountain Homes, and I originally met Miriam while filming the first episode of our new docuseries, Homerunners, which is the first show to go behind the scenes the world's leading vacation rental managers to find the guts and the glory of how the memories are made. And we'll actually be premiering that first episode on October 23rd in Las Vegas. That's the kickoff evening of VRMA International. If you want to attend, we do still have some seats left at the time of publishing this podcast, but tickets are limited, and I will take down that RSVP link if there is no space left. But I digress. I spent some meaningful time with Miriam in August at our Keystone retreats. And what really was cemented for me, what I've come to think of as her superpower, is a two-part combination of knowledge and personality. So her deep knowledge of all aspects of the property management business, seeing as though she got started accidentally, like a lot of us, she basically had to learn it all from scratch. And she is just an innately calculated, risk-taking problem solver. And two, her personality and her charm are so fun and so welcoming and so hospitable. They're so entertaining. In fact, that was the number one thing we heard from feedback in our first episode. We want more Miriam. In this episode, we talk about Miriam's early entrepreneurial roots, selling biscuits, what it was like starting with the Smoky Mountains gang, and of course the Gatlinburg wildfires. We also talked about having her company sold and how she coped with that. And finally, her current undertakings, which include a purpose-built vacation rental development and chapel. Yes, you heard that right. Miriam is building a chapel. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. And as with every episode this season, we've kicked off by asking Miriam, what does the phrase Homerunners mean to you?
Nailed it. So Homerunners, one word, and for me, nailed it. I mean, let's just bring it all back to where it began. For me, when we nail it, it's a home run.
And that's another phrase that you could become famous for. Nailed it.
Nailed it. That's really how I feel. Like when they're coming around, I'm like, nailed it to the outfield.
How do you guys celebrate when you nail it as a team?
So for us, honestly, it's a sit back and just kind of a sigh. I mean, in the vacation industry, we see it every day that a lot of times you don't nail it. Everybody is, if we hit it 95% of the way, we're patting ourselves on the back. But for us, when we completely nail it, hit the home run, you sit back and you look at the individuals and take back what you gained from it and what you learned to get there.
And what is the payoff?
That home run. And then that guest experience of, they leave that good review. And you sit back, and for us, it's like, yay, the payoff is we nailed it, and they're going to leave us a positive review that benefits the entire company.
And do you leave positive reviews when you travel or experience companies that you like?
To be honest, I didn't until COVID, really. I mean, and I think after that, before I was like, absolutely not. Why are they sending me this spam? But really, since all of that, I do now.
I've noticed that when I leave it, it makes a difference. Like if you leave it on Google, for instance, they'll send you little updates about how many people are reading and liking your review. And it's like a surprising amount of people. For instance, if I go to a great restaurant and I mention the name of a great waiter, it's amazing how many people are seeing that review, first of all. But also, I think you're right. Most people just don't do it. I've only recently started doing it, and it seems to be really well received by the company or the individual.
No, 100%. I think it's across the board too. I think really everyone, didn't see the impact of reviews before. And that definitely has shifted.
Well, there's your public service announcement, folks. Don't forget to leave a review.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
The good, the bad, the ugly. If you're going to leave a review for this podcast, leave out the ugly and the bad, only share the good. Miriam Ramsey, you stole the show in our first ever episode of Homerunners, which we filmed over the course of 4 months. One of our first stops was in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I had never been to Gatlinburg. It is a really, truly remarkable place if you've never been there. And specifically in the vacation rental sense, it's like Mecca. I mean, do you know how many properties exist in Gatlinburg?
Oh, so we have over 14,000 vacation rentals in this area. As far as homes as well, oh Lord, probably 25,000.
And it's really strong on the vacation rental scene. If I'm not mistaken, the vast majority of places to stay are vacation rentals, right?
Correct. Most people commute that work or anything in this industry as any of it. So it's property management to restaurants, any kind of businesses, you commute.
And people who are coming to stay in Gatlinburg, which is one big outdoor fantasy land, they're mostly driving in from cities.
They are. So ideally what we've seen is the perimeter is 6 hours. It is really the folks that we get that come.
And those folks are coming for 1 week's vacation, they're coming for a few nights. And it is really quite a, a world that I never knew existed up there in the mountains. And it seems to be growing, right?
Oh my goodness. In the past 4 years, astronomically, just has taken off and skyrocketed.
And from our time there together, featuring VTrips, which is the company that you now work for, we learned all about what makes VTrips unique. And one element of that is preserving the local brands of the vacation rental management companies that they acquire, and specifically preserving the key players. And you are the key player that features in our episode. And you stole the show because at the end of each showing, people come back and say, "We want more Miriam."
Oh no. I don't know if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing, Matt.
It's a good thing. You are by far, you inject the most character, which is what this industry is all about, to that episode. You've now been working for VTrips for several years. What do you think makes the company different from other large vacation rental managers? Because VTrips is the largest of the small guys, if anything.
So I think for us is keeping at your roots. V-Trips, he played it smart, when he started purchasing companies, keeping the brands that are locally there and preserving that. I think that's been the key thing for all of us, and even in the new acquisitions that's happened, keeping that local feel has been huge. And listen, it was a fight to get there with him initially.
What was that like?
So we kind of butted heads. And I tell you, you pick the battles, as most individuals know, there's a give and take with everyone. And for me, and most people know this, Steve is all about the numbers, seeing it, and I call it beating the dead horse, because there are things that I will just say, not a big deal. And there are things that I will come after every single time we have a conversation. And that was one of them things. And so then it was like, oh, that definitely makes sense.
So you were fighting hard to preserve the nuances and the local touches that do not scale.
Correct.
And what were some of the things you were willing to relinquish and let somebody in headquarters elsewhere take care of?
The accounting side of it. And then over the past little bit, even as far as guest services, as long as they know the properties and have a good rapport with the local team and brand, it'll work. So like right now, even for us, our guest service team is based out of the home office. However, we're in contact, my department is in contact with these folks, and we give them real life information. We tell them, hey, there's 3 steps going into the property, 4 steps here, exactly what's in the home. So that was something that I was willing to be like, okay, yeah, let's move it there, and it's not a big deal. For me, as far as like on the acquisition side, I was not going to say, yep, we can headquarter that from another area. That's something that has to stay. Maintenance has to stay in house. If they want to call and speak to somebody, or an owner wants to call and they have questions regarding a quote, keeping that in house with someone who knows the local brand, the market, it makes a difference.
And so the difference here, I think, would be that some of the other large management companies either don't preserve the local brand or attempt to steamroll the standards and procedures and systems in ways that don't cater to these unique Gatlinburg needs, right?
Correct, 100%. You can't just put up a little warehouse and call it an operations center and try to work remotely out of it. People want to be able to drive by somewhere and see that name that's on the cabin, in the window.
And you guys did build a little warehouse, but it was for something else. It was for housekeeping. I think that,
Yeah, so it's for a laundry facility.
and I think that facility is one of the best examples of your company in leveraging economies of scale and being able to do lots of laundry and to do it consistently and to make the housekeeper's job easier because they're not actually responsible for washing laundry. They're responsible for doing their craft of housekeeping. Does that strike you as a game changer when competing with some of these larger managers?
No, 100%. For us, we made it easy. Initially, in most areas, the housekeeping departments have to do the laundry, the linens in the unit. For us, like you said, they do their craft. They pick it up, they go do it, they come back, drop it off, shabam, we're going home.
You and Steve have a really unique relationship. And I'm curious what you were doing before vacation rentals. Like, where does your business journey begin?
So initially, I waited tables. Um, and then my husband and I had a smoke shop. And then also we had, so it was really in the more foodie commercial side of like gas stations. Um, we had a gas station with a deli um, that we ran. And then also we had car washes.
How did you get into those things? Like, how does one stumble into this little niche?
So for me, it was couple different things. So my husband was loved the car washes. He built one initially, and then the property beside of it came available, and it was this little rundown gas station, super tiny, and it made okay money. But for me, it was like, what could we do better? And so there was no other gas stations open at 5 a.m. So I love to cook. And I was like, I'm gonna go cook breakfast and I'm gonna sell biscuits. And this is actually a true story. It's actually terrible. I'm like, I'm gonna sell 2 for 2. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm gonna sell 2 sausage biscuits for $2. And he's like, well, are we gonna make any money? I'm like, we're not gonna lose any money. We're gonna see what happens. So the first day I sold 20 biscuits and I thought I was killing it. I'm like, I'm really onto something. So done that for about 2 weeks. Every day it kept growing a little bit. On going into the third week, ConAgra ketchup that does that brand actually used to be a big warehouse across the street from our gas station deli. So I thought, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to talk to these guys and see if I can give them a deal. Now, granted, I'm already 2 for 2, right? It's like, how can I make any money? So I talked to the little security guard. I'm like, listen, if you can send me business, I will feed you every day that you work for 6 months. And so he just looks at me and he's like, well, yeah, not a big deal. So that next week, I sold out of biscuits by 6:30.
And they were very clearly all coming from Mr. Security Guard?
Mr. Security Guard. Oh yeah, because they all come in their Conagra brand clothing.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh God, I'm onto something here. So I started making bacon biscuits. And then I did bacon, egg, and cheese. At this point, I'm still at 2 for 2, so I'm losing money. And I was like, oh, this is not going to work. So I went 2 to 4. Um, at first people were like, "Ah, we're not going to pay that," which, whatever. Ended up doing okay with it. And then I was like, I'm going to do lunch because this is, I don't know if you don't know this, but grocery return 16 years ago was a really good investment because food was cheap. Even doing that percentage markup was good. Um, so anyway, so we done that, and actually profited very well enough to for him to build another car wash. So we done that for about 2 years after we got married, and he wanted me to be the stay-at-home wife. So I done that. So we sold that. So long story short, we ended up doing very well. We sold the gas station deli, um, and I was going to be a stay-at-home wife. That lasted for 3 days, and then I knew someone who knew David Angotti, and that's kind of what got me from that into property management.
So at this point, David Angotti enters the scene. This is a longtime member of VRMB Communities, one of the co-founders of SmokyMountains.com, which at the time was a vacation rental management company that was growing. And how did you come in contact with David for the first time, and what were your impressions?
So the first time I met him, I went to interview with him and Wes. And so I get there and I'm wicked nervous. I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. Maybe I should Google them. But then I'm like, yeah, that's not that serious. So I actually go by the office, I miss it. So I'm walking by. And then, like, you feel someone staring at you? I turn around and there are these two guys at the window looking at me. And I'm like, what is happening? So it's like, whatever. How bad could this be? So I go in and they sit down, and my first impression was like, this can't be real. Like, these guys cannot know what, are they really property managers? Like, something's up.
And were you familiar with vacation rental property management?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I taught the guy who told us, he was like, you can answer the phone, do a little customer service. You've got this.
Okay. So you went in blind and trusting what these guys were saying.
100%. 100%. The guy that had introduced us, I had known for about 15 years at the time. And he was like, oh, they're great guys. I clean for them. We do maintenance. You're going to love them. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know about this. And so my first impressions, I was like, oh, this isn't terrible. So that we talk about it and we go through some stuff. And David jumps up and he's like, and this is where your office is going to be. And he takes me through this little hallway. All these boxes are built up. And he's like, here. And I'm like, and it was by myself. So they were in one side. So we had two offices, bases back to back. Well, him and Wes were on one side. And I was going to be over on the other side. Again, I'm like, okay, this is a little sketchy. But he's like, we're going to put a bathroom in. We're going to do this. We're going to put you a desk. And he's like, do you email? And I'm like, I can do anything. Like in my head, that's what, that's where I was at. I was like, of course I can email. And he's like, okay. So like he looks at, whatever. And he's like, well, we're going to think about it. And we'll let you know after the weekend.
Did you know how to do email?
Not really. Not great. I was like, sure, I can send an email. Like, how hard can it be? Like, again, in my head, this is easy. Absolutely not. And so he sent me an email, was like, hey, you can start this date, blah, blah, blah. So go in on the start date, and he sits me behind this Mac computer. We're sitting there, and David is just going through stuff 100 miles an hour. And I'm sitting there like, what the hell have I done? Like, this is terrible. Like, I'm never going to be able to do this. And he's answering the phone, he's doing all this stuff. And he's like, oh, you'll be fine. And he's like, I'll be right back. Well, like 2 hours later, he comes back, and I'm just still just sitting there. He's like, did you read these what did he say? These templates, yeah. He said, did you read these templates on how to do these things? No, like you didn't show me how to get there. So listen, my first week, and I know, and him and I've had this conversation. He was like, was never going to make it. But also, me and David initially didn't hit it off, which is now completely different because I was like, this guy's not relatable, and it was like I felt a little better with Wes. And so me and Wes had went out in the field. He did make me car sick. We went and looked at some cabins, and I was like, oh, they actually do property management because initially I had not seen anything. But then here we are, 2 months later, and I'm cranking out emails, I'm answering the phone, making coffee. I mean, I'm killing it.
And was that because of your attitude that was, I can do anything?
I think so. I think it was one of those, like, I'm going to do this if it kills me. And honest to God, I'm pretty sure I cried multiple times. Like after, because again, you would answer the phone, thank you for calling SmokyMountains.com, and people are screaming. And I'm like, why are they yelling at me? Like they're on vacation. Like I didn't understand.
Do you find yourself still asking that question?
Pretty much. I'm like, damn, I thought this would get better. Like, why are they still yelling at me? Now it's a different yell.
But so you enter into this niche that is so operationally
Mm-hmm.
complex, and you begin learning every aspect of it yourself through experience, which I think is the way a lot of our colleagues develop their knowledge base. And you basically rise in this company. And I would say one of the final chapters of that period of your professional careers was when the Gatlinburg fires took place. And share with our listeners where in hindsight you see the role of a vacation rental management company in some kind of adverse emergency like this.
So for us, or me, realistically, very traumatic. Um, you know, Earlier that day, we had went to the local grocery store to get some lunch, and it's like super smoky outside. I'm like, oh, what is happening? An hour later, we get back to the office. It cleared up. We were 2 days or 3 days after the big Thanksgiving rush, and it's still busy, but it wasn't like it could have been. And then all of that hit. I was out inspecting a cabin, um, and then it just starts hitting Gatlinburg. Roads start getting shut down. I had a staff member in our office, and honestly, it was so taken back. Like I honestly have never felt the helplessness of calling guests, trying to make sure we get them out of the houses, um, and then the news portraying everything being burnt down. And so for us, we had other property managers calling us, we had local real estate agents calling us. And for us, it was a time where you see towns and communities come together. And I think, and I've had this conversation with other folks that I think that's really what made us stronger and has continued to make Tennessee and this market so much stronger is we took a devastation and everybody really came together even now because before, you know when you were taking a property from someone else, like people would look at you, you're the girl from SmokyMountains.com. Well, now it's more of a mutual respect of, hey, you may have taken this unit from us, but what can we do? And you look at yourself, what can we do better to get them back?
Is that a lens that you found yourself looking at other companies through? Of course, the fires were such an extraordinary instance, but moving forward, do you look at other managers and property owners who are maybe managing their own properties and ask, how are you contributing or how are you showing up?
100%. And I think that's how you grow. And I think that's where it makes our industry so much stronger, is having those conversations with individuals and other managers.
And what do you think is the consequence of not showing up, or a company not contributing?
I think that's where you see the companies that are closing down, or the ones that are struggling, that are just trying to run it, again, from buying companies and not keeping that local flavor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why you're going to see a lot more of that happening, of, you know, not being involved in your community, in, even in with the industry, you will fall behind very quickly because it changes daily.
And one trend I've been observing across destinations is immediately post-pandemic, the supply of vacation homes was so limited, was so outpaced by demand, that all kinds of new vacation rental hosts and owners and managers entered the market, and the competition increased a great deal. And it's now starting to soften in a lot of those markets. Are you seeing the same trend? And if so, what are you noticing about the folks who are not doing so well?
Oh, 100%. I will say people are very much alike. They're the me's of the world. They're like, oh, I can do this and I can do it better. You're like, oh, this property manager, I could rent a home. And looking at it from the outside, yeah, you can throw you up a website. It don't have to be great. Especially like when you're in a time, especially like when the market was so hot here, for the past 16 months, 18 months, right? You can throw you up a website and you see these properties booking. But here's what you don't think about: the 2 a.m. sewage backup, the no water, the no HVAC. And then you have get your cleaners out there, get maintenance out there, and you're like, what have I done? And I think that's really the trend that we've seen is, look, people were killing it. They made money, but now it's a whole nother world. Now we're post the pandemic, and you see a different trend. So again, everybody looked at it from a mindset of, oh, we could do this. We don't really have experience, but how hard could it be? And now, and that's what you're saying, the companies that a lot of the startups during the pandemic are now struggling, or they've not been involved with other property managers to take notes and to grow on different levels.
And it's funny too, because that I don't have any experience, how hard can it be, is also the same mindset that you brought with you when you got started, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what do you think makes you different in this sense from some of the individuals we're concerned about now?
So for me, I will be very honest, I was surrounded by individuals who cared, had something to gain and lose in it. And so I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is the key players that I've had either as owners of companies. Both of my owners that I've worked for have truly cared about the guest experience, from David Angotti and Wes to Steve Mullet. And I think that's where, for me, it was a game changer. And a lot of folks don't have people, around them that care about the guest experience at the end of the day. Look, everyone wants to make money, but you have to care about the guest. And so for us, that's where I've been able to evolve and grow and learn all kinds of crazy stuff.
And now a word from our sponsors. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of FlipKey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. And so then after those fires took place, you basically had to tell the homeowners that David had sold the company to Steve, right?
Oh yeah.
What are the feelings going through your head when you present that to a homeowner?
So they told me, Wes and David told me I had just turned down a job because I believed in them, and so I was sick. I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" And they both just said it. So I just get up. I walk out of their office, go back to my space, and I got called our pest. I didn't call my family, my husband. I called our pest control provider, and I'm like, they sold us. I mean, who does that? But that's exactly what happened. My very first phone call was to our pest control, and he's like, "What?"
I would have called him and I would have said, I want you to go over to these guys' house and I want you to pump that thing full of the worst chemicals.
I couldn't even get there. I was like, "They sold us," and he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "They sold me and the cabins."
But so you had just turned down a job at what? So I'm guessing you're angry and completely uncertain, and you stuck with it.
I did. I was not happy.
You just decide to give it a fair shake.
No, it was one of those, "Hey, come get in the car. I'm going to introduce you to your new boss."
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And what about that experience? Because certainly David and Wes had never done that before. I think a lot of people who may be listening to this may want to start thinking about that kind of experience, whether their own company is going to be sold, or they're acquiring a company, or they're an employee who's considering moving on to the new acquisition company. What do you think? What did you learn from that? What could be done better?
So honestly, it could have been more of, and I think a little bit of this played into the fires. I may be wrong, but for me, giving that little bit of a break from, "Hey, you're sold to get in the car. I'm going to drop you off." I think that could have been, but I really think the big thing, again, listen, I was mad. And so I didn't really want to talk to David or Wes for the next month. Um, but looking back now, excuse me, I feel like for me, it was after this, we had the conversation of, if you are selling, make sure that you sell to someone who is going to keep your staff. That was my biggest concern. Because in my mind, and I told David, I was like, I will help them get through the transition. I will get our owners comfortable. And as long as they're good to my staff, I'll probably transition out. But that was my big thing. And I have to say, they were very, very nice to all of my staff that we had. Everyone embraced them, welcomed them. And that was a key takeaway for me.
Have a really interesting interview on this podcast with Linda Sylvester, whose company, Great Vacation Retreats, was acquired in Hawaii. And she, as one of their key players, went to the new company and said, I'm the key player here. Here are my non-negotiables. But they weren't presented in a forceful or demanding way. Rather, they were more like, I have some questions based on how you're going to operate the business. And she had a lot of questions about the local personality, character, kind of things we're talking about today. And she said their answers to those questions were not satisfactory to her. And those responses were what gave her the confidence to seek a new opportunity. And she just so happened to get hired by another VRMB community member of ours, Jed Stevens, and his company, Koloa Kai. Do you think as a key player, it's important to have those kinds of priorities in mind?
No, 100%. Because honestly, and look, I have to say this, I've been extremely blessed. I had no questions because I don't do well with change. So I said nothing. And so for me now, I feel like it'd be a different conversation. I feel like I would be a her where I would ask questions and kind of go through that. I said nothing.
What kind of questions would you ask in hindsight?
So for me, it was, what does my company or this company merging in with you look like over the next, 6 months? The strengths, the weaknesses, because listen, we all have them. And so for us, at Smoky Mountains, we were very strong with booking. We kind of struggled at the operational side of it. And I think that's the key takeaways for anyone who is selling or merging with a company is you need to initially find out the strengths and the weaknesses and work together and format both of those. Because realistically, when your two companies combining as one, there's strengths and weaknesses on both sides. And I think that's the biggest key takeaway for me is I would ask, what do our owners see? What is going to be guest impacting that we're going to see from you guys over the next 6 months?
Are there any other companies in the industry, whether other managers or vendors or suppliers who you really admire?
For me, it's just seeing so many different companies play out different scenarios, different situations. A ton of respect for everyone. And for me, it's one's not better. I think everybody who's in this industry, and I say this, my very first conversation when I interview anyone is property management is not for the weak of heart. And for me, it's been a trigger. It's been a situation where I look back now and have grown, even as an individual in business, but even as a personal level. And I think that's the biggest thing is for me, there's been so many impacts from so many different groups and meeting so many different individuals. So you guys know we acquired Southern Vacation Rentals. I was there a couple weeks ago, and a couple of their key players per se have been having a ton of conversations with. They're actually here in Tennessee right now, and intriguing individuals. Kind of realistically, one of them who runs them now started very similar to what I've done. Definitely was not what they were looking at and has been a rock star for them. And I think really most people who get into this industry, not all, but most, don't grow up and say, I want to be a property manager. Because like, what does that mean? But I think everyone brings different roles that have come into the property management level, whether it's customer service, being techie, whatever. And I think that's what makes our community so great.
I love that. So you started 2 for 2 biscuits.
Mm-hmm.
You moved into the vacation rental management space.
Oh, I waited tables in between that too. Sorry.
Waiting tables in between. Biggest lesson from learning from waiting tables?
Oh my God, don't let people's drinks get too low. They get very upset.
My lesson from waiting tables is be nice to your waiters because they're stressed.
Oh, yeah.
But this brings you all the way up to this latest project, which I think is such a wonderful example of the surprises and unsuspecting brilliance in our industry, and you are more or less running a new purpose-built development. What's the story here for our listeners?
So, oh, what a story purpose building has been. Um, so for us, Steve acquired some property. And initially, he got it in a time when the market, there was nothing that you could purchase to buy that was either rent ready to be built on. So for us, it was a game changer. In my mindset, he gets it. He's like, I have this amount of acres. I think we could build, some properties. Let's see what we can do with it. So Steve always comes into it with this vision, and then he's like, here you go. Let's figure it out. So for us has been a little bit of a roller coaster up and down with it. But we actually do break ground. We are breaking ground now where we're going to we're building the dream for individuals and have properties that at some point we may sell. But it brings inventory to us and guests initially where that is lacking across the board. And so for me, I do this every day. I know what guests are looking for, and that's what we're going to have ready for them when they get there. What are the high demands? Right now, it's swimming pools. So we are going to cater to the swimming pool indoor world. Some will have theaters, some will have fire pits.
And share this big innovation of an amenity.
My chapel. So I'm building the grace. That's what we're calling her. Steve, he's really still questionable on it, but she's my baby. So I raised his child, aka the laundry facility. So now we're building my child, which is the grace.
And the grace, for those who don't know about it, Miriam was thinking about a central amenity for this development. How many cabins in the property?
So we are building, it looks to be, so met yesterday, I think we're going to be able to get around 76 initially. And there also is some land that we are trying to negotiate for on the back end that could realistically put us about 150 units of purpose building.
And Miriam starts thinking to herself, how can we utilize this common space within an amenity that would not only be a nice value add, but could actually bring in business? And she came up with the idea to create her own chapel, which I love. Miriam, you're going into the world of spirituality. And this is going to be now a space that people can rent. And naturally, if they're having a wedding there, they have a place to stay too.
Correct. So they can get married there, they can rent it out. So, really, not sure if I'm going to do it. And this is terrible. Can we do it by the hour? 2 hours? I'm not sure yet. We're going to look at the demand on it. But it's realistically going to be something that the design is going to nail it across. I mean, people are going to come to the resort to see the grace, which is the chapel. For me, it was what is big here, and a lot of individuals are coming here to get married, and having that cater to them. It's kind of a one stop. They're coming in, they can get married at the Grace, redoing the pool area, the other common area, putting in fire pits, um, and doing all that. So for them to use.
Are you going to be accepting any Jewish weddings? Would I be able to reserve?
Listen, I'm an equal opportunist. I don't care who comes. We love everyone here in Tennessee.
Miriam, final question. We interviewed Matt Roberts, the CEO of Vacasa, and one of my questions to him was, what do you think a small vacation rental professional can do better than Vacasa? And he said that he didn't think there was anything that a small vacation rental manager could do better than Vacasa. I'm curious your reaction to that and what your answer would be.
I mean, really, oh, Jesus. Anyways, so honestly, the smaller ones they have that more personal relationship. I have to say 100%, which is one of the key things we spoke on initially was fighting to keep the local flavor and keeping that person on the ground in that market The small guys, look, they struggle being able to provide extra resources with marketing and all that, but they have that sometimes they have that better one-on-one with homeowners. And even that guest feel of you're able to answer the phone on the second ring per se instead of maybe it ringing a couple of times. And and that's the thing. It for me is the smaller companies sometimes have that better feel with each other.
And it leaves us with a really powerful return, I think, to the singular home run, which is you can start with one property and be focused on hospitality and be using all the resources that are at your disposal and to surround yourself with bright minds who have been through that process before. You can be with one property significantly more hospitable than a giant venture-backed firm. And for me, it's the understanding that if it starts with that one guest or that one homeowner or that one relationship, and you do that really well, there's a path that you can take if you want it. And if you don't want it, you can stay where you are. But it really, I think, provides a huge opportunity for anybody who has the right mindset and who is ready for the expectations that we're trying to set for anybody to really change their life in this space, to live the dream.
Living the dream. I say it every day. I mean, you're 100%. Do we live the dream every day? Probably not. But again, and I go back to individuals work 365 days a year for that 3 to 5 night vacation. And the first 5 minutes of the feel of getting there is what they take home. And that's for us when we say home runner, when we nail it, is that guest experience coming in.
I love how Miriam just ended this episode, that business like ours is not always pretty. In fact, a lot of days it's really just gross. But yet, we all seem to continue doing it, or at least continuing to help other people do it. Why? Because the outcome of this job, well done, is so meaningful. Knowing that you created an experience that'll likely serve as a high moment or a memory in someone's life, that is much more than a business. That is a calling. I think Miriam was called to do this. And heck, now that she has a chapel, who knows what she's capable of next. But I challenge you in hearing Miriam's story to channel that unsuspecting genius, that hospitality leader in you, in your next strategy session. Take risks, figure out what you're good at, bet on it, draw boundaries, know when to take that leap. This is next level entrepreneurship. I've always believed it's what makes our colleagues in our industry so amazing. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, consider joining Miriam and me and over 1,000 of the world's most thoughtful and creative vacation rental professionals. We are collaborating and problem solving daily under one virtual roof. You can join at vrmb.com/join. Until next time.
I'm all in, I ain't count the chips, I had to make it flip. I'm the alchemist, just sound it out whenever you pronouncing it. My name's legit, baby, this where the magic is.